In this video, I'm going to talk about the carbon cycle. To grow, organisms require both carbon and energy. Photosynthetic organisms convert energy from the sun into ATP, which they then use to reduce carbon dioxide into sugar. Cellular respiration, on the other hand, counterbalances this removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by using oxygen to oxidize organic molecules into carbon dioxide and water. The amount of carbon dioxide removed from the atmosphere by photosynthesis and the amount returned by respiration are about equal. The short-term carbon cycle considers exchanges of carbon that are driven by the biological processes of photosynthesis and respiration over days, years, and decades. So in this system, photosynthesis continually converts carbon dioxide into organic molecules using the energy from the sun, and respiration harvests the chemical energy stored in organic molecules, and in doing so releases carbon dioxide and water in the process. These complementary processes drive the short-term cycling of carbon throughout the biosphere. In 1958, the American chemist Charles Keeling began a program to monitor the atmosphere by measuring the carbon dioxide concentration in the air. He set up 5 towers and sampled the atmosphere every hour with an infrared gas analyzer. Within the first few years of his project, a pattern of seasonal oscillation became apparent. Carbon dioxide levels were highest in the springtime and declined by approximately 6 parts per million by the early fall. And this seasonal pattern has stayed consistent over the past 50 years. So why do we see this pattern? The reason is that the seasonal cycling of carbon dioxide is explained by the higher rates of photosynthesis in the summer and the lower rates in the winter, of course, except in regions near the equator where that pattern doesn't hold true. Cellular respiration, by contrast, tends to remain fairly constant all year. The other pattern that became evident from Keeling's work is that there has been a steady increase in atmospheric carbon over the past 50 years. The result is that the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere on any given date is greater than it was a year earlier. And in fact, there's been a 25% increase since the study began in 1958. Keeling's data of atmospheric carbon dioxide levels only covered the past few decades. So how could scientists look further back in time to understand if the increasing carbon dioxide trend had always been occurring, or whether that was something new? So the question was, how much carbon dioxide was there in the atmosphere 1,000 years ago? To find out the levels prior to 1958, scientists looked at the ice cores drilled in Antarctica that contain air that's been trapped for over the past 1,000 years. By analyzing the carbon dioxide trapped in the different layers of the ice cores, scientists revealed that the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels remained fairly constant between the years 1000 and 1800. But that was before the start of the Industrial Revolution, a period of time that saw a massive increase in the burning of fossil fuels. So we can see here that there's definitely a correlation between the increasing carbon dioxide content of the atmosphere and human activities. But a correlation simply means that the two events or processes occurred together. It doesn't necessarily establish causation, and that's a relationship in which one event was caused by the other. So more research was needed to demonstrate causation. So the question we might ask is, what caused the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide? From that, we would form the hypothesis that burning fossil fuels caused the major increase in carbon dioxide. And that gives us a working hypothesis to develop our methods and determine our predictions. So to determine if this hypothesis is supported, we need to base our methods on the knowledge that carbon has 3 isotopes: carbon-12, carbon-13, and carbon-14. So scientists looked at the relative composition of these carbon isotopes in the atmospheric carbon dioxide. So Hans Suess measured the abundance of the 2 stable isotopes, 13 and 12, and demonstrated that the ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12 had decreased over the second half of the 20th century. At the same time, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were increasing. So these results indicate that the carbon dioxide being added to the atmosphere has less carbon-13 than the carbon dioxide already in the air. So the carbon dioxide source must have a low carbon-13 to carbon-12 ratio. And the carbon-13 to carbon-12 ratio of the carbon dioxide that is emitted by volcanoes or comes from oceans is way too high to account for the results. The results could reflect the conversion of plants to carbon dioxide from burning, or it could reflect the burning of fossil fuels where the carbon dioxide has been trapped for millions of years. Organic matter in living organisms and in the soil that's formed by photosynthesis has just the right isotopic composition to account for the isotopic measurements that were found. But the measurements also show that the sources of added carbon dioxide are depleted in carbon-14 relative to carbon dioxide already in the air. And modern organic matter contains too much carbon-14 to account for the observed pattern. Only fossil fuels have the right ratios of all 3 carbon isotopes to account for the pattern of isotopic changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide. Large-scale burning of fossil fuels has been and continues to be a principal source of carbon dioxide buildup in Earth's atmosphere. And it's that buildup of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases like methane that's created the climate change crisis that threatens not just biodiversity, but all Earth's natural processes and all life on the planet, including our own. You can find out more about climate change, our role in it, and how to help through a number of organizations, including the International Union for Conservation of Nature.